Hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. And the title of this particular talk is Armageddon versus Esau. Armageddon versus Esau. And I emphasize the verses because the proper meaning of the word Armageddon, if we go back to the original paleo-Hebrew, is Har-Ama-Gededi. Har is a prefix that means mount or mountain or horn, and also in a metaphorical sense means power. Ama is another sort of subsidiary prefix that means a collective, like the Amazulu is a collective. So it's qualifying the suffix, which is Gededi. So Ama-Gededi means essentially the people of the Gededi, or the Gededi people. And that Gededi suffix is a reference to David, the people of King David. Because the name David is actually just the two consonantal paleo-Hebrew construct dal, two letters. And it was pronounced actually Deod. And when it came into the King James, that little V in the middle actually carried that sort of diphthongal sound. But the sort of sound value of that letter V has changed over the years. So now it is no longer Deod. It is now David. When we read the word as it is now spelled. So Armageddon and references to the War of Armageddon really is a war against the rise of the power of the Gededi people, the people of King David, which is just another way of referencing the Negro, another way of referencing Israel, children of Israel, because the people of King David are the people narrowly of the tribe of Judah and more broadly of the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob. So when I say Armageddon versus Esau, the implicit reference is to those two twins, the two sons of Isaac. Armageddon or Har-Ama-Gededi is referencing the children of Jacob, ultimately. And Esau, of course, is representing Jacob's twin brother Esau, and all who are now his descendants today. And what sort of frames the whole discussion we find in Scripture. And this is, oh, by the way, as long as I have this up on the screen, I wanted to go someplace, but what I'll do is I will talk a little bit about what's up on the screen here for a little bit first. And what we have up on the screen is a Russian icon, there we go, depicting the transfiguration scene where you have the figure of Yeshua, nowadays called Jesus, in the middle, and a return of the character of Elijah and also of Moses. I think Moses is the one in the red robes, and Elijah is that one with the dreadlocks. But it is a Russian icon, and if you just simply notice, and you can't help but notice, that all the characters are depicted as Negro. In other words, these are all Armageddon people. You understand? And this is the essential drama that is now unfolding in terms of the war in Ukraine between the forces of UK, NATO on one side, which in a minute I will identify with Esau, and Russia, the Russian Federation. And I want to sort of bring to the fore the idea that in their origin, the Russian people are Negro people. And that's why when they produce these icons, they straightforwardly depicted them as what they were and as what they knew the biblical figures also to be, meaning the Gededi people. Okay. So let me further make this point because there is an essential, what nowadays is called white supremacy dynamic in terms of this war between the children of Jacob and the children of Esau, otherwise known as the War of Armageddon, but really should have always been understood as the war by the twin brother Esau against his twin brother Jacob. That's what the War of Armageddon is. That's the whole drama that is unfolding and has unfolded in the world going back at least about 3,000 years, and indeed more than that. But the idea that the Russians, who are nowadays sort of taken to be another set of white people, fall on the sort of Negro side of that divide between Jacob and Esau is what is confusing to many people. Why? Because we tend to look at incidentals, not at fundamentals. And that's why, when we say, well, we are African, well, in a sense, yes, because a lot of our people were scattered into Africa. And so in that sense, they may be called African, but you're forgetting who they are. They are children of Jacob, scattered into Africa, just as they are children of Jacob scattered into what is now Russia, and children of Jacob scattered into what, say, for example, is now Fiji, or what is now New Zealand, or what is now Hawaii, and indeed what is now Mexico, because we were there first as the Olmec people. We were scattered into what is now places like Nicaragua, Belize, Honduras. And there we were the Maya people. And we were also scattered into what is now Peru and came to be the Inca people, and what is now Mexico, on the Aztec side of that sort of part of Mexico. And then there was a Mongolian invasion, actually. And they didn't bring many women with them. So that the so-called Amerindian today could be a people that is only partially Negro, and some of them are of paternal seed line which goes back not to Jacob but to the Mongolians. And they would look not very different from those of the Maya people, who also mix with Mongolian seed, but their paternal line remains Jacob. And this is information I've been given. So that in Europe, you have on the western side people whose paternal seed line is Esau, and they have been at war with the Russian people, whose paternal seed line has been, for the most part, Israel, Jacob. And white supremacy came into it in this way. See this from the book, The Coming of David Messiah. There's a footnote here, footnote 163, and a reference is given, a YouTube video, which was put out by one Kurimeo, and I give him thanks for that. And he referenced a book by Benjamin Franklin, written in published in 1755. And I refer to it here at page 10 of that book, because he showed it on the screen, so I stopped the screen and I made a note. But this is Benjamin Franklin speaking. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, which I emphasize, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also, excepting for those Germans who are Saxons. I kind of paraphrase, who with the English make the principal body of the white people on the earth. He was wrong actually, because what he's referring to here is those white people who were sons of Isaac. That's why they're called Saxons. But Isaac had two twin boys, Jacob, the Har-Ama-Gededi, and Esau. And a lot of Esau kind of mixed in with the pale-skinned people of the earth, to where Esau is principally white today, although there are some also children of Jacob who are white, because the Russians and the Swedes and the Germans, not the Saxon ones, who started out swarthy, have also become somewhat lightened and whitened and brightened. And all the way along there has been this contention between Jacob and Esau. So here Benjamin Franklin is adverting ever so sort of subtly to the white supremacy dynamic that certainly has developed over the last 200 to 300 years. In America, certainly, but also in Europe. And in Europe, you had this divide because the Esau became sort of prevalent, or the more powerful of the two twins, so to say, in terms of their descendants, in the West. While in the East, and in particular in what is now the Russian Federation, even though there was a lot of mingling and mixing, the principal sort of, if you like, ethos remained Israelite. And that is why this sort of discord between Western Europe and Eastern Europe, in particular Russia. So the Western Europeans have had a white supremacy kind of sub rosa hatred of the Russian people. That is what is going on in terms of this US, UK, NATO formation on one side, the ethos of which is a white supremacy ethos, notwithstanding window dressing, sort of, swarthy people like General Lloyd Austin and Susan Rice and Condoleezza Rice and a few other, swarthy ones who are part of that, and even Barack Obama, who have been part of this white supremacist mix in terms of the US, UK, NATO formation on one side, as opposed to what transpired and what is still there now on the Russian side of the equation. But even in Russia, the word Ukraine, let us introduce that thought right here now. The word Ukraine, when you sort of translate, go back to its etymological origins, and it is there also in the paleo-Hebrew, but I won't dwell on that here now. It means the border region. Actually, it's cognate to the name America, because America also means the people of the western border. Okay, but what happens at the border? This is this place where you have, It's like two oceans, where the Pacific Ocean meets the Atlantic Ocean or wherever. You will have, one sort of quality on one side and another sort of quality on the other side. And in the border area, there's a kind of an uneasy sort of mixing that goes on. And when you have that uneasy kind of mixing going on, it's sort of like a people, you kind of get a people there who kind of are neither nor. They don't know whether they're this or they're that. And certainly there's contention in the border area. In the heartland, there's no contention because everybody is happy with who he is and everybody knows who he is. But in the border area, you're going to have contention. And so that you have this Western Ukraine, which identifies strongly with Esau, identifies so strongly and in part, to an extent of fanaticism. Why? Because even their identity is under sort of question and under attack. So they're even more Nazi than the Nazis, you understand? The Banderites and that kind of idea that has been nurtured by them, that actually seeks to put down the sort of native and essentialist Russian as even a subhuman, same as the National Socialism of Hitler and the Germans. There's nothing wrong with nationalism and there's nothing wrong with socialism. But when you take the National Socialism to this kind of extreme, where you sort of raise up your own ethnicity above every other ethnicity and start seeing every other ethnicity as being beneath you and giving you the right now to go and take from the Untermenschen, the lower beings, that which belongs to them. Why? Because you consider yourself superior, and therefore might is right, and you can go and take it. Now you have a different kind of ideology that has come up, and you now have a war, as Scripture calls it, nation shall arise against nation, meaning ethnos against ethnos. Okay, meaning going back to the sort of genetic origins and roots. That's what that is referring to. Okay, so in this talk about Armageddon versus Esau, I am therefore adverting to that perennial struggle between the twin brothers Jacob and Esau. And I want to kind of go scriptural as to that, because it is Scripture that explains all what is going on. A lot of us have the mistaken idea, those of us who are in effect atheists, we seek for meaning, treating as fundamental things which rather are merely incidental. So we cannot sort of, even imagine a world that is different, fundamentally different from the world that we have known at least these past 3,000 years, under which Esau has had the dominion. And this is the fundamental. Esau has had the dominion for some roughly 3,000 years, and I need to go. Let me go back to Genesis, and bear with me. I will hew to the I'll get back to the point that I have been making, that the world that we now about to enter into in this 7th millennium is going to be a world radically different from how it has been these last roughly 3,000 years under Esau's dominion. Because under Esau's dominion, it has been a world where the strong will take advantage of the weak. It has been a world where there has been war after war after war. And sort of hidden within that sort of phenomenon of war after war after war has been a satanic pact that Esau made with Satan. And under that pact, he has to keep producing these blood sacrifices on a fairly frequent basis. This is a point I've made before on some earlier uploads, but I need to make it again to kind of... here is the... starting here at verse 38. This is a blessing that was given to the twin brother Esau. And I'll go back in a minute to the contrary blessing that was given to the twin brother Jacob. But let's look here for the moment at Esau. And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. This is after Isaac had already given the blessing of the dominion unto the twin Jacob. So watch this. So under, if you, in a sense, a kind of a duress, Isaac said, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword, in verse 40 here, by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So this is intimating two things, that Esau was given the dominion for a while, as we will see in a minute, but associated with that dominion was this sort of qualification that it is by his sword that he shall live, which is just a way, when you understand scripture, and if you read the sealed book of Moses, recently unsealed, that matter is made more plain, because it was the same that happened in terms of the struggle or contention between the brothers Cain and Abel. And Satan worked with Cain's feelings of hatred and envy when it was that Abel's offerings were accepted and Cain's were not. And this is when the priesthood of Mahan was instituted. And under that priesthood of Mahan, which is a priesthood of Satan, that had to be sealed in blood. And that is what Cain had to do. Cain had to kill his brother Abel to seal the pact that he then made with Satan. And then, you know, in that way, Satan, in a sense, protected Cain, that even though he had done this wicked thing, he still nevertheless could seemingly get away with it with impunity. So he took from that act of slaying Abel, all that belonged to Abel then passed to Cain. And then furthermore, he, you know, if you remember other parts of Genesis, anyone that, first a mark was put upon Cain, which was essentially white skin, and the Most High actually let it be so that if anyone would take revenge upon Cain, that it would be a sevenfold sort of retribution taken upon such a one. So he even got that protection. And that was anticipating the time when Esau would have the dominion under the same kind of arrangement, under a satanic pact, and seemingly Esau, in this white supremacist sort of manifestation, could seemingly get away with everything. This was the colonization and the slavery projects, that they could go all over the world, enslaving, colonizing, oppressing, repressing, exploiting, and seemingly with impunity. Indeed, not seemingly, actual impunity, because he had been given this dominion. And that's what the dominion means. Dominion means you're in charge. And then the idea of dominion is there throughout Genesis. Man was given dominion over the beasts, because it's a rule of order. Man was given dominion over woman. Not that man is essentially superior. Yeah, he has greater muscle mass and body mass, but that doesn't make man superior in any real sense to woman, because God gave woman also gifts. And with those gifts, well, okay, I won't go off on a tangent there. So the dominion is not a matter of an essential superiority of the one exercising the dominion. All it is a gift. It is like in the military. And if you've been in the military, you know that there is such a thing as the chain of command. Now, when you join the military, there is a requirement that you give obedience to the one higher up than you in the chain of command. He doesn't have to be better than you. Very often, the subordinate is a brighter fellow than the one who is in charge. But nevertheless, the one in charge is the one that you have to salute. You understand? So this is what dominion essentially means. So now we go back up in Genesis 27 to where now the dominion was given first to Jacob. And here it is, Genesis chapter 27. And let me start at verse 27. And he came near and kissed him. This is Jacob now approaching his father Isaac. And he smelled the smell of his raiment and blessed him and said, See, the smell of my son is the smell of the field which Yahweh hath blessed. So actually Isaac thought he was blessing Esau. Okay, because Esau was the elder twin. Even though the Most High had already let the mother, Rebekah, know that it would be the younger twin that would get the blessing. So there's a whole sort of chicanery that was involved even in getting this blessing to be given to Jacob, which involved the mother. But anyway, let me carry on. That's an aside. Although it explains a lot of what I will also address, which is the perpetual hatred of Esau for Jacob, because Esau has always felt that the blessing of the elder was stolen from him by the younger brother Jacob. Okay, but that idea is vitiated, because in fact he had sold the blessing to the younger brother Jacob for a mess of pottage, which is then another part of this book of Genesis, which I won't go into. But here is the blessing. Therefore, God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. Verse 29, let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren. This is the dominion. And let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. So this is the first dominion that was granted to Jacob. But this blessing, and this is essentially the dominion, and this is the dominion that rests with Jacob, with Armageddon, and which now is being reasserted by Russia as that horn, that power, and essentially Israelite power, which according to scripture is now sent against Esau, because Esau's dominion was only for a set time. There was no qualification to the dominion given to Jacob. Well, there was, because there were curses that were put upon Jacob under the covenant, to where if he obeyed the covenant, then he would have the dominion and exercise the dominion. But to the extent he failed to keep that covenant, the curse in particular of affliction through servitude would be upon him. Now this is most evident and indisputable so far as the Negro of the West is concerned, because we went into the 400 years of servitude for our iniquity, because we didn't keep the covenant. And that's there in Deuteronomy chapter 28. It's there in Leviticus chapter 26. It's there in Exodus around chapter 12 and other places. And even in the case of Russia, if you look at the history of Russia, that serfdom that was there under the autocratic rule, a czarist autocracy, there was a kind of a servitude that the people there had to suffer. And they too have come out of it now. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. So this is the first sort of scene setting. And now to make the point I embarked upon, which was the idea that in the dominion that is given to Jacob, there is no reference to by the sword. It does not involve the pact with Satan. Rather, what is the enforcement? The enforcement is, blessed be he that blessed thee, and cursed be he that cursed thee. So that the enforcer of the Jacobite dominion, Israelite dominion, Har-Ama-Gededi, is the Most High himself. And as long as we keep the covenant, we would have that blessing. So that we are now entering into this 7th millennium of peace, although it doesn't look like it. And all those who are of atheistic sort of leaning, or at the very least they're not versed in Scripture, will have the idea that the way the world is the way it is in some essentialist way. And so it is the nature of man to war, to war, to war. It is the nature of man to be this sort of rugged individual who will try to take and take and take. But the Most High is letting us to know, by bringing down this financial system, as well as using Russia as Har-Ama-Gededi to deliver a whipping to Esau, US, UK, NATO, because he says he hateth Esau. And that is a strong word when you read that in Scripture. Unless you really studied, it will it will kind of let me what's going on here. We will tend to want to reject the idea that God hates Esau, but this is what Scripture says. So let us take a look at that. Let's do it this way. Malachi chapter 1. This is, let's start at verse 2. I have loved you, saith Yahweh. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Saith Yahweh. Yet I loved Jacob. And verse 3, and I hated Esau. I didn't write this. I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness, which is actually sort of, prefiguring what is now coming upon Esau now. So the question that anyone should ask, if they don't want to, is why? Why would the Most High hate the twin brother Esau? And there are different kind of answers that one can kind of bring to that question. Ask what is the difference between Russia and US, UK, NATO? What is the difference? Think about that for a second. The difference, and this is my opinion, but I think I am correct, is that Russia is real. It has a real economy. And what is a real economy? Again, we must go to fundamentals. Don't get caught up in incidentals. Finance is an incidental. Finance is not real. Okay? A real economy is what you get in a village. One can have a very prosperous village without any money at all being used as any kind of store of value as a way of intermediating exchange amongst those people in the village. That is the idea of communalism, where we suppose, according to this book, we're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to share with one another. We're supposed to help those who are poor, help those who are in need. This is what the Most High wants of us, to love one another. It is a very simple thing. But when you have a sort of an economy that is mediated through finance, and let me just give an example of a sort of a village kind of economy where we are in effect forced to help one another, because one man by himself, just for example, he may not be able to raise a barn to store grain when there's a harvest in the field. So in a normal kind of course of events, in that kind of a situation, they get together and say, well, look, you help me with raising my barn, and guess what? When it is time now to raise your barn, I will help you. So they come together as a community to do barn raising. And when it is that, the harvest time has come, and no one farmer, so to say, is able with his own little family by itself to harvest the crop, without losing, without some of the fruit or the wheat or the barley or whatever it might be rotting rotting in the field, because you have to harvest it when it is ripe. And if you don't have the sort of resources to do that, then you're going to lose some of the crop. So you have again a need to come together as a community. So when my crop is coming in, you the neighbor, come and you help me. And when your crop is coming in, well, I go and I help you. So this is the essential idea of working together, loving one another. And then when all the fields have been harvested, you get together again as a community and you have a great little party. And you play music, you sing, you dance, or whatever it is. And this is throughout the world. This is sort of a natural, real economy, how it works. And guess what? Everybody will get a roof over his head. Everybody will have his needs met. Everybody will have a full stomach. Okay, there will be no such thing as unemployment. And not only will everybody's physical needs be met, also the emotional needs of community would be met, of belongingness would be met. And this is the difference between Russia, and I have to make it very sort of stark, make the differences very stark. The sort of ethos you have in Russia coming out of communism, and they were, I guess, like that even before communism. That's why Russia became communist. When Marx certainly didn't expect the conditions were there for Russia to be the first country to go communist. He thought it would happen in Western Europe, in the sort of the sweatshops of Western Europe. But no, the Russians, they were on the land, and they were used to helping one another. But they also had the overlords who had reduced them to serfdom and etc. And so they understood the idea of community. And that, that sort of essential ethos didn't really go away under communism, although they kind of, went astray when in terms of the godless aspect of communism. But even during the communist period, that Orthodox Church remained. That essential ethos remained. This idea of the Russian grandmothers, the babushkas, I think is how they're called, were like, the sort of the people that kind of kept the village together. And it is comparable with the African, really Bantu, Jacobite kind of saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Because that is a kind of a communal ethos again. And that's how the Most High wants us to be. But Esau went another way. Esau was always the hunter. And when Esau got rich, Esau, tried to be that rugged individualist. And Esau worked finance not to bring it to the community, to develop the community and enrich the community and make the community prosperous, but to go off by himself and live in the big, mansion and gather more and more wealth unto himself, even as he became more and more separated from his brethren. This is how Esau's sort of ethos. That's how he was led to the idea of the rugged individualist. But he could do it because when he got the dominion, Again, it's like in the army. Even if you have a commander who is quite incompetent, even if you are smarter than your superior in a military organization, guess what? You better snap to and salute that superior. Even when you see him making mistake after mistake after mistake, because he has the dominion. And if you step out of line, he's got power through court martial and whatever other means to certainly bring you to heel. And when the Most High makes a covenant, he keeps it. So if Esau has been given the dominion, Most High enforced that. And that's why Esau, even with his wicked ways, with his white supremacist sort of delusions, even though he could sort of walk the world as a sort of a colossus, doing wickedness and leaving destruction in his trail, Most High let him do it, because that was the covenant of the dominion. But it was for only a set time. And now that set time is up. And that was one of the points of the first upload on this channel, in terms of that audio letter of demand upon the Catholic Church and upon the state of Israel. So that Revelation chapter 18 verse 2, Babylon is fallen, was one of those prophetic verses that the Most High made me to refer to and put a date on it. And that date was it was I think it was the third day of the new year 6008 in the Most High's calendar. But that was in the spiritual. So it's done. It's a fait accompli in the spiritual, but it is working its way out now in the physical. And we see it working its way out in the physical. How? Because Esau, and by the way, it's an interesting, if you look at Esau, within Esau you've got US in there. In fact, you've got USA. And within Esau you also have EU in there. But anyway, let's just leave that to one side. But what they're finding is that the power that they used to exercise so effortlessly, it's not there anymore. And day by day, one can actually feel it palpably slipping away. So Macron, the French president, could go to Africa, and he could be, in a sense, upbraided by the president of Congo when he misspeaks in front of him. Wouldn't have been that long ago that, the African president would remain silent when the white man came misspeaking. Not anymore. President of the United States, Monroe Doctrine, he could say it, and as he said it, so it was. Monroe Doctrine. Biden can hardly even control his own bowels. You understand? So that sort of power that had been enjoyed, the power of the dominion that was upheld by the Most High, even with all the wickedness that accompanied the exercise of the dominion by Esau, in terms of the white supremacist world order, that is now crumbling. And Russia has been given the job, acting for Jacob, acting for Armageddon, they have been given the task of bringing that down. And as I indicated in the previous upload, Russia actually laid siege. Russia acting for and on behalf of Armageddon, for and on behalf of Zion, laid siege upon Babylon. Babylon being identified with Esau. And we can kind of make that point because Most High hates Esau. We just read it here. But Esau is also identified with Gog and Magog. He's also identified with Babylon. How do we know? Let's go to Jeremiah. Verse 29, and the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of Yahweh shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. Well, this is just another way of saying Esau. He hates Babylon too, but really Esau and Babylon are one and the same. I can prove that further, but I will leave it there. Those who know Scripture can go and verify that. He's also Gog and Magog. And this was the point I made here in the book of Ezekiel chapter 39, starting at verse 1. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So Gog is the chief prince. He's that fallen angel. The word prince is used for the angels, as it is in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, where it talks about Michael, the great prince, standing up for his people, which is Jacob. So as opposed to Michael being the chief prince of Jacob, Gog is the chief prince of who? Meshech and Tubal. Tubal was one of the sons of Japhet, and Meshech also. So it is letting us know that Gog is the chief prince of the children of Japhet. And when reference is made to Gog and Magog, we are being told that Gog, in fact, was that fallen angel who was the actual physical seed line father of Magog, who was titularly the son of Japhet. And so Magog became that vector of infiltration of fallen angel seed line amongst the children of Japhet. And we learn from the book of Enoch that, one of the signs of a child of a fallen angel is that he comes out with pale skin. So that's where the sort of white skin a tendency came back again after the flood. But I'm not I'm not trying to suggest that pale skin in and of itself is a marker of wickedness. No, but it is an incidental. And so with that there came a gradual lightening and whitening of skin after the flood again. And it impacted Esau because Esau mixed in with the children of Japhet through the grandson Zepho, as we learn in the book of Jasher, as he was made king of the children of Romim, what was the other name they had for it? I forget now. And then he went about and sort of conquered the other isles of the Gentiles. So Esau got mixed in with this Gog seed line, which is a fallen angel seed line. And Cain had already prefigured that, because Cain was given that white skin after he made his pact with Satan. And here, in verse 2, we say, "And I will turn thee back, and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel." So now the Most High, with the, the dominion having now slipped away from Esau, his time is up. Now the Most High says, "I will turn thee back." And this is an actual reference to what is happening there now in Ukraine. I had an earlier upload which is indicating that this verse 2 was fulfilled in Ukraine, because Ukraine started out with an army of about 600,000. Okay, and there came a point, which was indeed reported, where roughly 500,000 of the 600,000 they started with became casualties of the war. So to the very, leave but a sixth part would be 100,000 left from the 600,000 they started with. And with about 100 to 150,000 actual killed, and with a sort of a ratio from those killed to those who are wounded but unable to fight, adding up to about 500,000 casualties. But in any case, leaving a sixth part. So that Ukraine is now at least a reconstituted army, maybe twice times over, because NATO has been backing them up, not only with money and with munitions and with machines and etc., but also with actual boots on the ground, hidden Polish boots, American boots, British boots, and etc. And here is the verse 3, which I talked about in the last upload. "And I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand." Well, what did we just have 2 days ago? They had the Grim Reaper, the Reaper drone, MQ-9 or whatever they call it, on a reconnaissance mission, spying mission in Russian assets there in the Crimea at the naval base of Sevastopol. They did not fall. It's akin to an arrow that fell out of thy right hand, isn't it? That is what is going on. But it is also indicating, we see people like Lindsey Graham there in the Senate, sort of in effect calling for more war, because this is how Esau has been doing it. Esau has had the dominion. And so with the dominion, you acquire a certain arrogance. You kind of expect that your way is the way it must be. And who is this swarthy fellow, these swarthy Russians, to tell you something different? So now they want to sort of beat down Russia, not really understanding that the game is over. The game is up. Their dominion has ceased. The Most High is no longer backing them up in terms of the dominion, because that ended. It is now Zion laying siege upon Babylon. And part of a point I should have made in the last couple of uploads there, in terms of this prophesied destruction, verse 17, "And thou, son of man, Thus saith Yahweh, speak unto every feathered fowl, unto every beast of the field. Assemble yourselves and come, gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel. Here identified with Russia, the power of Israel, that ye may eat flesh and drink blood. So this great destruction is fulfilled in what is going on in that meat grinder war of Ukraine. The latest estimate of Ukrainian soldiers killed is up to over 250,000. And multiply that by 3 or 4 and you get the number of casualties. And this, in the very first upload of this channel, I was given, was fulfilled in the spiritual on Passover last year, which was April 5th. And if you are just watching not long ago, a couple of days or 2 ago, where I came across the information that indeed in the first part of that war of Ukraine, Brother Putin actually did engage in negotiations with the Ukrainians, and as of April 1st, had reached an agreement, which would have essentially, implemented what had earlier been agreed in terms of Minsk, excepting for the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, which were not going to ever go back, and also Crimea, which was never going to go back. And the Ukrainians were agreeing to it. And that's when Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, was dispatched by US, UK, NATO to tell Zelensky, no, don't agree to that. That was 4 days before the Passover. And it was the Passover that was the date now for this to be fulfilled in the spiritual. And so after US, UK, and NATO rejected the negotiated settlement, is when this was sort of sealed in the spiritual. And that was what led now to a different phase of the war, in which Russia kind of upped the ante, so to say, and now it has become a meat grinder. When in the beginning Russia had entered, in a softly kind of way, trying to make a point, a moral point, that it was it was willing to go and do what it had to do, but it didn't really want to fight. It didn't really want to destroy Ukraine. But now, after April 5th, with this verse here being fulfilled, we now have a meat grinder. And Russia will do what Russia must do, because for them it's existential. But as to US, UK, NATO, which is Esau, which is Gog and Magog, they will escalate and escalate. Because this is what it says here in verse 2. I will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. So, US, UK, and NATO is going into this war with Russia without plan, without stratagem. The only thing that's leading them on is pure emotion that they are the ones in charge. They are the king of the hill, so to say, because that's what they have been these past 3,000 years. And their rules-based international order is what must always prevail. That is what they're being driven by. But they're completely unprepared for what Russia now is bringing against them. The Russian economy is real. The US, UK, NATO economy is financialized. So much so that the US has been deindustrialized. And they did it themselves for reasons of money and finance. I was in China in 1987, which was sometime after Kissinger and Nixon had gone to China and made, sort of a rapprochement there with China. And there was an opening up in China with Deng Xiaoping afterwards. And with that opening up, the Chinese economy was allowed to bloom because they could get a market in the United States. And furthermore, United States corporations could, and they did, dismantle their plants in America and go and re-establish them in China purely for increased profit because they could cut the wage bill to a fraction of what the wage bill would have been in the United States and turn around and sell their product back into the United States. So in a kind of, they built up China. They allowed China to industrialize itself with a sure market back in America, purely based on considerations of money, finance, and profit. And this was all to the benefit ultimately of who? The whore, the great whore. Babylon, mystery Babylon, as spoken of in the book of Revelation, that rideth that beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. And he was raised up as a money power, as was prophesied in the book of Daniel chapter 7. Not in so many words, but that is how this king, known as Mystery Babylon, that rideth that red dragon, is distinguished from the kings that came before, because Esau's rule, it was sort of a kind of a checkered rule, because various horns came and went. The United States is just the last of various horns that came and went. Britain had had its time. And Spain had had its time, and one can go back. I've dealt with that in the book The Appointed Time. And this is as early as 2012 or so, this information was given to me. And even China is there. China, when it comes, will be one of those horns. And he will have his time, but only for a short time. I think that's in Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. But Russia is the one. As a matter of fact, Russia was also one of those horns with the 7 heads, but as united, as the Soviet Union, because of that mystery Babylon, that great whore that rideth the beast, as the money power, it was like he was acting like a sort of a money lender on the street. So he would raise up kings to kneecap other kings as a way to keep these kings in line and under control. So the United States has had its run, starting at least in earnest since after the Second World War, but already, it was coming to come long before that. And then when the Soviet Union fell, Russia reverted to its essential identity as being Israelite, and still maintaining that ethos of each one helping one. And we see it even in the military economy. If you compare the United States sort of military-industrial complex and the Russian military-industrial complex, the American one is essentially hollow because of this finance profit. Even that Reaper drone that the Russians took down a couple of days ago, I see reports that it was valued at $32 million. Now this is a nonsense. I mean, I think that, in terms of what is there, I mean, you would have to strain to come up to $1 million. In my opinion, I may be wrong, but 32 million is just way out of in terms of order of magnitude required, which means that all of that extra padding, so to say, that is there is all financial. It's all profit. You understand? Whereas in Russia, they're producing these hypersonic missiles, the Kinjals and the Sarmats and the where's the other one? I forget the other one now. But they're doing it still with a communal kind of organization, number one, and ethos, number two. So the oligarchs have been reined in, those oligarchs that were kind of trying to do it the US, UK, NATO way under the sort of financial magic of that great whore, which is sort of an homonym of HOR for the House of Rothschild. And even this collapse of the banking system, the monetary system that seems to be underway, and it will collapse. It will collapse. Now they think they're going to sort of reform it into a form where they have even greater control over the people, central bank digital currencies and so forth. But in fact, in the end, that may last for just a few months, maybe a year or so, but not longer than that, because their dominion is at an end. The dominion of Jacob is about to take its place as part of a millennium of peace, where a communalistic kind of ethos will substitute for what we have known under Esau's dominion, where finance will serve the people as opposed to serving those who can do the financial magic of Wall Street and etc. And the Most High has set it up that he can put now the real economy of Russia. He set it up so that Esau, in putting sanctions upon Russia, in a sense forced Russia to decouple from the Western economies. And so when the Western economies' financial systems now are in ruins and going there, now Russia is standing stable and strong. And Brother Putin makes a point of linking the value of the ruble to gold. So it's not a fiat currency where you can simply go and print paper and call it money. That's why. They hardly have to. When I say they, I mean U.S., UK, NATO. They think they can do war and finance war by simply printing more money. So you have this 31 or 32 trillion dollar debt by now, and rising, and they can solve every problem simply by printing more money, thinking that the world will continue to essentially underwrite that nonsense. And the world recognizes that no, this certainly can't work, because you having us to use the dollar as a reserve currency in the world to be used for international trade, and with this kind of reckless printing of more and more money, deficit spending by the United States, in effect, who they're calling upon to underwrite that are the people of the world who use the dollar as a reserve currency. Because inevitably, and indeed we are seeing it, it is causing inflation. So if you're holding dollars as a reserve currency as some foreign nation, the dollars you're holding are daily kind of deteriorating in value. So every nation that has been holding dollars as a reserve, because this is what is used for international trade, has been de-dollarizing. The only thing is at what pace you de-dollarize. China has been doing it now for some time, well understanding that they couldn't do it all overnight, because that would simply collapse the dollar and they would lose if they did that. So they've been gradually de-dollarizing, using it to finance their Belt and Road Initiative in Africa and in other places. And the last straw has been, the sanctions that they put upon Russia, where everybody who was holding dollars, and when I say everybody, I mean every country, because this is now at the level of central banks. It's like, wait a minute now, if you kind of stand up against their so-called rules-based international order, they might do to you what they just did to Russia, which is to seize all your money holdings in their banks. So when you see that, what are you going to do? You're going to withdraw your money and put it someplace where they can't put their hands on it. And the best way to do that is to de-dollarize, to go from dollars to gold or something else that will be a reliable store of value. And this is what has happened to Credit Suisse there in Switzerland. What was the death knell for Credit Suisse was that they agreed to give up information on their clients to people like the Internal Revenue Service of the United States. So now, what was the strong point with Swiss banking was it was all private. Well, if they took a decision to now make it, subject and bent to the will of the IRS, well, now you've changed that equation. It's a little complicated, because at the back of it all remains the HOR hole, who at the last count, held over $260 trillion sorry, I have it the wrong way. If you did a combined total of debt, treasury type debt owed by all the governments of the world, the total is about over $260 trillion. with much of that ultimately being held by the HOR. Because, it's all done through Wall Street accounts, what do you call it, brokerage accounts and so forth, and most of that is on margin. So in effect, when you purchase these securities, treasury bonds, and also stocks and etc., you don't have to put up more than, in fact, less than 10% to acquire the asset that you're purchasing. So you've bought on margin. Well, who is underwriting the rest of it? You're underwriting the rest of it. When you trace it all back, it's going back to the House of Rothschild. So when you have the kind of pump and dump kind of schemes that go on, if you become subject to a margin call because the value of the asset has gone down, if you're long on a trade and the value of the asset has gone down, then you have to maintain margin, and so you get a margin call from your broker. Anyway, I don't want to get into all the mechanics of finance, except to make the point that it's all a kind of a financialized magic that takes one away from the fundamental. Fundamental being communalism, where each one helps one. And Esau went so far away from that ethos, they went to this rugged individualist kind of ethos. So even those who know that something is wrong and the brown material is about to hit the whirling object, and the preppers and etc., they are doing it in a sort of rugged individualist way. They will, they're hoarding gold, they're hoarding food items, they're hoarding this, they're building cabins in the woods, they're going off grid, they're doing all of that. But very few are doing it as communities, you understand? Because they think they can go off into the woods and survive. No, you need to go back to the communalist kind of organization. That's why Africa, to the extent it has not been completely spoiled by Esau's kinds of ways, where there is everybody still kind of remembers, the village from which they come in Africa. So in the worst case, you go back to the village. You can farm the land. You may have no money. If money fails, you don't have money, but you can farm the land. And you can help one another, which is that communalist ethos that the Most High loves, and why part of the reason why he hates Esau, because Esau doesn't work like that. What else is there? I think, let me go to Jeremiah. Yeah, so here's another kind of reference to Esau. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of Yahweh shall be performed against Babylon. Well, that's just another way of saying Esau. So Esau is known as Esau. He's known as Gog and Magog. He's known as Babylon. He's known as some other terms. To make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. This is what is happening. If you go to, I think, Obadiah, I quoted that the last time. Verse 18. Let me start at 17 this time. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Their possessions here being the possessions of Esau. Verse 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. So the Joseph there is Russia. And the house of Esau, look at it, USA is right in the, is part of Esau, isn't it? And EU is also part of Esau, isn't it? So that Joseph Borrell fellow there, who is the sort of foreign minister for the EU, talking about the garden, and outside is the jungle. I think somebody has taken to calling him Jungle Joe Borrell. So even in the name Esau, the Most High set it up so that we can see these little signs. Anyway, the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. For Yahweh yes, for Yahweh had spoken it. So this is what is coming down upon Esau now. And that's why you have in the book of Revelation, not only does he say, Babylon, i.e. Esau is fallen, and that is reference. Verse 2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. That is repeated, is fallen. Why? Because Esau has sort of different sort of identities, but it's still Esau. So whether it's Gog and Magog, or whether it is US, UK, NATO, or whether it is the HOR, it all comes back to this Esau fellow. And watch this. Well, I'll read verse 3, although that's not the point I want to make here now. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. That's why he hates Esau. Because Esau is wrong. Esau is beholden to Satan. The fallen angel Gog is one of those from Satan. That's why he's a fallen angel. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. Because we've been seduced by all, the sort of financial magic and so forth. And the rugged individualism. And wanting to be rich as opposed to wanting to be part of a community. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. But here's what I wanted to make the point. And 4. 3 is good to help us to understand why it is the Most High hates Esau. But watch this, verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Because, I am using the term US, UK, NATO, but there are many of us who are Jacob caught up in US, UK, and NATO, but really do belong to Jacob, or are a part of Jacob. And if we remain within that Esau kind of magic, and I don't like that word, but I can't think of another one right now, because there's been I call it magic because it's a kind of a deception that is there. There's a kind of a seduction that is there. Nowadays in America they're using the word woke, which I still don't quite understand what that means, except to understand that it is actually it's a misnomer, and I hate that, and I won't use it. because they're identifying it with things which also don't make sense. The point is, if you are of Jacob, is to become now awakened to who you are as a child of Jacob, and for whom this admonition applies. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. So we must awaken to our true identity, awaken to what it is about Esau that the Most High hates, and reject all of that. So now when they use a word like woke to kind of advocate for things like LGBTQ, now they've got their panties up in a twist. And no pun intended. That's not what this is about. Okay? And so when these various US, UK, NATO agents, working for the media, whether it is BBC or CNN, Christian Amanpour and that other one from the BBC, going to Africa and asking questions about, LGBTQ. They smile at them. The new president of Kenya answered them very well. The old one also answered them very well, Kenyatta fellow there. And also the president of Uganda answered them very well. And back in the day, Zimbabwe, what was his name? President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, answered them very well. And look, this is not, don't bring that to Africa. Okay? Our people in Africa certainly need to awaken to who they are as Jacob, but that certainly must not equate to entertaining this nonsense about LGBTQ and other kinds of nonsense, including, even the environmental stuff. Some of it makes sense, but a lot of it, even scientifically, they're quite wrong. But that's a whole other discussion. And I know a bit about it because as a consultant, I did some work for the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And I remember being profoundly, unpersuaded by what they were offering as science for this thing called climate change. And when you come to know Scripture, you understand that a lot of what is going on has been prophesied in Scripture. If you read the Apocalypse of Abraham, a lot of what we take to be climate change, whether it is earthquakes, whether it is wildfires, whether it is hurricanes, whether it is cyclones, whether it is, hail, and whether it is, aurora borealis, seeming to arise in places where it's not known to arise. All of these things were prophesied. So when we talk about, climate change as a reason for what we're seeing, the floods, and etc. When you understand Scripture, you know that it is not climate change, it is the hand of God. It goes along with the time of Esau being now up. And that's why I don't even worry about the threat of nuclear war. Even as Esau, he is causing Esau to escalate and escalate and escalate. At the same time, he's letting us know he will slap the bow out of their hand and make their arrows to fall. So when he makes of them a desolation, whether it is by nuclear weapons sort of being forced upon Russia now to deploy, or whether they simply use conventional weapons, I don't know, but there's going to be a great destruction upon US, UK, NATO. They become the habitation of birds and every unclean devil, and etc. And so we must come out of her in whichever way the Most High guides you to come out. So for some people, you let them stay where they are. As Jeremiah, he didn't get out. But after that siege succeeded, and they came, they actually took Jeremiah away. And Jeremiah was the one that brought over the stone of Scone, Jacob's pillar, over to the British Isles, to Ireland, in fact. That same stone of Scone that King Charles wishes to have himself coronated, sitting upon. And good luck with that, because their time is up. Okay, their time is up. And this is what, I was kind of given to talk about in terms of Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. And I think down to about 27. Because there shall be reconciliation for iniquity. And 70 weeks are given. And I talked about that in an earlier upload. I won't talk about it here again. So that's where I would like to stop, to kind of bring into a sharper understanding that what is going on in the world that should perhaps be brought under the biblical rubric of the War of Armageddon, which is really the war against Armageddon, and really it is a war ultimately between those two twins, Jacob and Esau, where Jacob is Armageddon, Har-Ama-Gededi, the horn, the power of the rise of the people of King David, against Esau in his various sort of guises and manifestations, whether as known as Gog and Magog, or whether known as Esau, whether known as US, UK, NATO, whether known as Babylon, whether known as the Great Whore. He's known by various names. But in whichever name, he is that one that is hated of the Most High. Even though under his covenant, the Most High had him to exercise the dominion. But he exercised the dominion through satanic back by the sword. And so he has had to live by the sword, meaning war upon war upon war, in which he's always making these huge blood sacrifices to Satan. And a lot of us think that that is simply the way of the world. Well, it's not the way of the world. Because when Jacob now comes into the inheritance, we shall have a millennium of peace, where even the lion will lay by the lamb. Okay? Where the sword will be beaten down into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks. And where there shall be peace. Where that David Messiah will be a light unto the Gentiles even. Because a whole different way will be brought upon the earth. It doesn't have to be war at all. Okay, so that's where I'd like to stop. So, as I do so, I give all praise, I give all glory, I give all exaltation unto the Most High God, Yehava. And I say to all those listening, Shalom.